The strawberry sherbert worm, and it's funny how it seems like all the flies that I tie for Grey Reef have some kind of dessert name to them. Banana split, one of my crane flies I use on Grey Reef, and that's exactly what they are. Crane flies, worms, it's dessert to trout, and Grey Reef is a unique situation in that most of what the food these trout are eating in that river is dessert. They don't have to work too hard to find big scuds, leeches, crane flies, aquatic worms. And offset the hook point a little bit, and I'm going to kind of bring it down just a little bit. Just going to tug it that way a little bit. And what that does is, it seems like I get better hook sets if that hook is slightly offset. And then I just kind of tug it down a little bit. And what that does is it kind of narrows the gap on that hook. Gap on this hook is already plenty big as it is. Just kind of narrowing it down just makes it a little easier on the fish. Personally, I think, we fish streamers and don't have an issue with it. I don't think this is any worse than that. We just make sure we smash our barbs once we fish it. So, I'm going to start my thread down here. And I'm using, again, a red UTC 210. It just makes it easier to wrap if you don't have little ridges in the thread. So I'm going to grab a Wapsi stretch tubing in the small size. Stretch tubing here. I always try to make sure I give myself enough because we're wrapping this all around the hook and then we're stretching it. Sometimes the worst thing you want to do is come all the way to the front and realize you don't have enough. Second material, this is a hot pink ultra wire in size medium. And I'm going to take these two materials and I'm just going to lay them right next to each other. And I'm going to even out the tips. And I'm going to tie those in right up along the top of the hook, right here. And just as much as I can on this first way around, try to cover up the whole hook. If I miss a spot, it's not a big deal. I can just make sure I cover it up on the way forward. I'll take two pieces. I just want to make sure they lay nice and flat right up against each other. I use two on the size. If it was a smaller one, I'd probably use just one. It's a little bit bigger hook. So I just get them wet so that they stick together. And then right here, I'm just going to tie that in right there at the back. Once I get to that point, set my thread there, trim that up, and then I think it's just real important just to take your time on the way forward. Just make sure you get all that hook covered up, and I'll just adjust the hook just to see where my thread wraps are going. And right here, once I've gotten to this point, there's a lot of material that I'm moving forward by the time this fly is finished, and what I don't want to do is when I'm spinning the micro tubing or whatever is kick this thread off because it'll throw off my fly big time if that thread comes unraveled. So I'll throw one whip finish down right there to kind of hold my bobbin in place. And see, I got three materials here. The first I'm going to spin forward is going to be the micro tubing. And I'm just going to make sure that right here, that first wrap is kind of the tough one. And I just want to make sure I don't offset my crystal flash or that mirage flash to do too much. And I'm just going to wrap that forward like so. And I just want to make sure that I get every wrap right next to it, the previous wrap. tried using a red, and it works just as effectively. My thought is, on all the natural, annelids that I've seen, is that they're somewhat translucent. They're not a, chenille, solid red worm. So the more that I can get a more translucent look, the better. And it starts with this clear microtubing, and then you'll see kind of my final step. That's the final step on the Glazed Sherbert worm here. Okay, so I'm going to take it right to there, and right here I'm going to pull it tight, drop a thread wrap behind it. Just make sure I've got it secured. Put 2 wraps in front. I'm just going to stretch it tight. Again, just to be safe, I'm going to throw a whip finish down. Keep it in place. Now, here's what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to take my crystal flash and I'm going to secure it over the top as I wrap this wire forward. Okay, so right there, with each spin, I'm just holding it right in the middle. Like so. One more wrap, and then right at the center of the hook, I put down a little pink heart on the worm. I'll do this to make sure that each wrap lays as tight next to the previous as possible. And what this does is not only does it, create a worm segmentation, it gives the fly a little bit more weight too, which is always a good thing, I feel. So I put the heart down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue segmenting it from here to the front. Right to there. Trim excess crystal flash and come in behind here. And I'm just going to spin that wire so it breaks off. Now if you look there, I have you can see that kind of shine on the top, and it just helps, the fish find it a little bit more in that deeper, murkier off-colored water. And do the whip finish. Now, you could probably call this fly good at this point, and I know for a fact it would catch fish. At Grey Reef though, same with the pine squirrel leech, it's just a lot of whipping the flies around, getting moss off of them, and just the teeth of those fish, the little teeth will cut into that thread, and if they pull that thread where you've whip finished loose, it starts to come unraveled on you, which will still fish, believe me. But just to kind of add to that translucent effect that we talked about, what I'm going to use is UV Nonsense, and I'm just going to put a light glaze on it, hence the name of the fly, the Glazed Sherbert worm. UV Nonsense or UV Fly Seal both work. Get a kind of a bad rap for being not a very durable material in comparison to epoxy. And I would say that's probably true. One, it's a lot easier material to work with, this UV is. And what I find is, if you're using UV on a, let's say on a copper john, it will peel. But since this is continuous all around it, and it has some of that wire and that flat on too. I haven't had much of a durability issue with it. So what I'm doing now is I'm hitting it with a UV light, which is kind of a nice gizmo. You end up having to tie in the evenings a lot and you don't have your natural UV light at your disposal. Just like that, it's hardened. And that is one dirty